Our guest today is an international keynote speaker, performance coach, and best-selling author. His enthusiastic, engaging, and educational seminars have motivated thousands of people around the world. An expert in teaching you how to take charge of your mind, he's helped over 200 of the biggest companies and sports teams exceed their potential to reach peak performance. For a lesson in how to achieve your dreams, please join me in welcoming founder, CEO at Mi365, Pete Cohen, to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Welcome, Pete.
Welcome. Yes, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
Thanks, and thanks for coming down. And thanks for that coffee with some kind of, what's he got in it? Mushrooms or something?
Got a mushroom in it. I think...
I'm not going to start tripping out or anything.
Probably. And it is a magic mushroom, and there's no question about it. It's one of the things I think people are going to be hearing more and more, this word adaptogens, that there are certain foods we can put in our body and they adapt to the challenges our bodies have. I mean, I didn't know much about mushrooms, but we share quite a similar DNA with them. And I think most people know mushrooms can kill, but they can make you hallucinate, but they can also heal. So, yeah, I'm mushroomed right up at the moment, so yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you got here, not the taxi or the Uber.
The bus, the 13 bus from Golders Green. Actually, where we are, I cracked my head open. You see that mark there?
Yeah.
I cracked my head open at the swimming pool in this hotel in 1976. Really? So I don't think I've been back here since then. The blood stains are still on the sort of just outside. I have worked in the fitness industry. I started in 1989, became a fitness instructor, then an aerobics instructor, personal trainer, and I absolutely loved the industry, and I love fitness. I think it's one of the most important things that every single person should know about, but became very disillusioned. Would I say with the industry? Not at first. I became disillusioned by the fact that so many people would join a health club. I became the gym manager of the largest gym in Europe at that time, which was the Barbican. When I left university, that was 1991, and I just became very disillusioned by the fact that all these people are joining, but what's happening? Why do very, very few people actually stick around? And it didn't take me very long to realize that I'm a little bit of a freak because I like exercise, but most people hate it. They don't believe in themselves, they don't like it, so why should they carry on doing something that they don't enjoy doing? So I then studied psychology, and then I tried to come back into the industry, but I found it really hard. I felt that the industry wasn't very receptive to what I actually had to share, which was answers around behavioral change, how people were thinking, how to help people with their confidence, with their willpower, with their belief. So yeah, I mean, I'm just a bit crazy in terms of human potential and helping people. But I love the fitness industry, but I suppose I also hate it as well, if I'm being totally honest.
Because you spoke at Ursa in the past, and I suppose you've been around I've seen you a lot. I think that's how we met at a lot of these industry events. So when you say you're disillusioned by the industry, what part of the, because I guess in some ways it is doing some great stuff, but what part of it exactly?
I mean, you say about it's doing great stuff. I think what it is doing is great stuff for people who are into fitness.
Right.
But what is it actually doing? You know, we talk a bit like it's an entity, like it's a person, but it's not. It's an industry like many others that is quite fickle, that is quite hard to penetrate. It's like many others. It's like the spa industry. It is what it is. But if I'm critical of it, it's, like I say, it tends to serve people who are already into fitness. But what is it actually doing for the people who come for a bit, then stop coming, or people that would never walk into a gym? That's what I'm interested in. There are people, you and me, we would exercise, we would pay to exercise, right? I mean, we probably do, because we would pay to go to a gym, right? But because we love it, but we make up such a small percentage of the population. 98% of people hate exercise, don't really know what they're doing, and they're the ones we should be really looking to make it a habit, help them to take the lead in their health.
So when you use that word industry and you say, you know, we talk about it as a person, what do you think are some of the key things that make it up? You know, what is really driving it then, and who is it?
Well, you know, you just said that, and in my mind I was imagining that the fitness industry was a person, and if it came in, I'd say to it, "What are you doing? What is happening? This is a joke. You know, you're so into yourself. You're so into your six-pack. You're so into just you're not really into helping other people, which is a bizarre thing to think about because, like we've said, it's not a person. But let's face it, most of us are insecure. Most of us have some issues around the way that we think and we feel about ourselves. And unless we really look at what's going on inside people, I don't think the industry is always going to be in trouble because it's only going to be attracting a small percentage of people who either like exercise or do it because they're just insecure and they just want to look good. Like you just came back from FIBO, right? So we know FIBO is the absolute extreme. You've got the people like us who like exercising, and I don't want to use the word begins with F, freaks. But people, maybe that's too harsh a word, but people who are really putting their bodies into conditions that maybe our bodies aren't really naturally designed to do. And it's like, that's who we're kind of serving. We need to really start serving, I was going to say this silver head club, but if you grew your hair, what color would it be? I was just speaking to one of your team here, John, who's in the silver hair club, and he's now doing his level 2 fitness instructor, and he was going to do his level 3, and he wants to be a personal trainer because part of what he wants to do is attracting the aging, I say it's not exactly really old, but the population that are 30, 40, 50 plus. What we find with people who are in their late teens is they're insecure, they're into their bodies. As you get people into their 20s and 30s, they're still really into their bodies. They tend to get more into nutrition. As you get into their 30s and 40s, people tend to be a little bit more into the mind. And as they get into their 50s, they tend to be a bit more, dare I say, a little bit more spiritual. Things like yoga and Pilates seem to appeal more to people that know that it's not just about how you look, it's about how you feel about how to live a long life. But what I think needs to happen is we need to treat the people who come into the industry like how we're going to be treating people in medicine moving forwards. We'll look at people's individual makeup. So treatment for people in the medical world will be what is actually that your body actually needs to make you well, rather than just giving everyone the same thing. And that seems to happen quite a lot in fitness. We need to find out more about people, what their history has been of trying to exercise and get the results that they want, and what do they need. I mean, I talk about this, I think if we could categorize people into 3 groups, right? So the first group is the people it doesn't matter about them because they are going to exercise. They are those people who just love doing it. Mm-hmm. Then there's people on the other end of the spectrum. It doesn't matter what you do, they're never going to exercise. You could do it for them, and it still wouldn't make any difference. But it's the people in the middle. Those are the ones I think that we really have to. We talk. What's that word? Behavioural. What's that word that's been bound around the industry for years? Something behavioural change. But it's the people in the middle that could go one or two ways. They're the ones I think we really should be focusing our attention. Because I wonder how many people who own gyms or facilities, health clubs, what difference it would make if they could just make a few hundred people every year go from someone who might leave to someone who then falls into that 2% club, the one who goes, this is just what I do. I exercise because it's part of who I am,
Do you think it's something to do with like categorizing? Because I guess, there are the young people, and I suppose they are motivated about what they look like for different reasons. When you're that age, you're trying to meet a partner, and so your body image is good. And do you think that because that's such a big part and it's an easy thing and people are copying other people and saying, well, that's what we want to focus on, that we're just focused on one channel instead of realizing that there's probably multiple channels to go after, but people are just, they're not aware of that? Do you think that's the issue? Or, because I guess if you look at it from a business perspective, which obviously funds a lot of these innovations and, gets movements going, it sounds like we're just focusing on that narrow channel that's about looks, which undeniably is a channel in business, and there's a reason to sort of get people, certainly for some of the younger people, getting them into exercise and off the street and building them up is probably a good thing. But what's your thoughts on those?
I think that's what the market predominantly is appealing to. I'm not going to mention any names, but I do still go to a number of different health clubs, and you see that's who is being served, and served quite well, and it's being made cheap and available, and people can go at any time. And I mean, who would have believed, 30 years ago that people would go and exercise 24 hours a day? So the first gym I worked at, 1989, I think you know the gentleman who employed me, Colin Deans, and that was my first experience of working in a gym. And we were this is how we were told to work. Basically, if you didn't have a program to design for someone, you basically had to find someone and spend time with them. That's what you had to do. You could not do anything. And that was great because we built relationships with people. And when I actually did my dissertation at university, my degree was in sports science, I did it on exercise adherence. And what I did at that gym, we took 100 people who had left the gym at various points, some after a week, some after 6 weeks, some after 6 months, some after a year. And basically all I did was get on the phone and speak to them to find out why they left. You wouldn't have believed the amount of people that came back simply because I called them. Simply because I had a conversation with them and they felt that connection. And you're right, some people don't want a connection. They just want to go in, they want to put their music on, they don't want to talk to anyone, they want to lift big, drop the weights, and they're just into themselves. And that is a market. But I think what's going to start happening more and more is people realizing we need to have a club.
Right.
Because more and more people want experience. And we are providing great experience with different types of equipments and color and music, but more and more people are going to want to feel a connection. Does this person care about me? This is my club. I don't want to go home because I feel at home here. And maybe that's already happening because I don't know what's going on in the whole industry, but I know that people do really well when they're in groups. You know, we live and survive in packs, and I think that the more we start to understand a little bit more about how people are thinking and how that affects what they do, and we don't just play around with this, we really start to do it, then we'll make this industry, that sounds crazy, right? We'll make this industry great again. Because the human body is only designed to do one thing. It is only designed to move. Every cell of our body is charged through movement. We know that. We know that when we do it, we feel good. But yet most people, when they think of exercise, they don't think about that. They think of being picked last when team captains were choosing sides for the game. They think of being a back of an aerobics class, being completely out of breath. They don't get a good feeling about it. As you and me and so many people we know, how we feel has got absolutely nothing to do with what we do. And you just think how many people there are in the world right now that are sitting down somewhere going, I don't feel like it. I don't feel like it. I don't feel like doing the paperwork. I don't feel like getting out of bed. I don't feel like doing anything. I don't feel like exercising because exercise hurts. So I'm not doing it. But yet we know that when we do something, we feel better for it. We were involved with some studies, it sounds crazy, but people who hate maths. And we wired up their brains and we got them to think of maths, and we saw pain receptors light up when they were just thinking about maths. But when they started maths, the pain would go away. And that's what happens for us. And Nike know this. You know, Nike, just do it. They know that you could just do it or you could just not do it. And imagine if we could help people that were thinking, oh, I could just do it or just not do it, get them to go, no, I'm going to do it. And we get them to do it because we help them be very attached to the outcome. And this is really important. I don't mean the outcome of this. I mean the outcome of having done exercise. I don't know why you exercise. Well, why do you exercise, just out of curiosity?
Well, years when I started, it was exactly as you said. It was I wanted muscles. I wanted to look a particular way. That was my motivator. And then as I got older, as I got out of that, it became more because it was mentally, it was really important. So as through business and relationships and things, it was always when I went in the gym, I just mentally felt a lot better and clearer. My mood felt better. And then as I got older, it was more just being able to, function and live life a lot. Now, even this morning before this, we've got a busy day. I just needed to go out, lift some weights, have a run, because I knew it would just make me better for what I had to do in that day. So it becomes part of, I guess, your daily hygiene, like cleaning your teeth. But I guess I've sort of worked that out in my mind, I suppose, as that's what I need to do.
So it helps you be on your A game.
Yeah, it just helps. Yeah, I guess it just without it, I just don't feel as good.
I don't know if you're like me. I make poorer decisions and choices. I have less willpower, and this is a massive area because what I've been doing for years is when I realized I couldn't penetrate the industry like I wanted to. I mean, LA Fitness, who now obviously don't exist in the UK, they bought a license of my weight loss program. We were getting incredible results. But we were relying on their trainers to take this message to the people that were coming into the gym. And we had to bypass them because most of them just don't care. I'm sorry to say, but so many instructors really don't care. They just care about themselves. That's why a lot of people join the industry. And I know there are some people who be watching this going, no, that's not true. Well, that's great. If you're not that person, fantastic. But, personal trainers can be the hardest people on earth to work with. If you've ever done a lecture to they'll sit like this because they think they know it all. And I'm not talking about all of them, but a lot of them. Realizing, look, it ain't about you. It's about who you can help. And I love to sit down with them and say, you show me yours, I'll show you mine. And I don't mean show you my abs or anything else. I'll say, I'll show you the success I've had with people who want to lose weight and get fit. And you show me yours. I'll show you my portfolio. Because I take pride if someone wants to work with me and helping that person get a result. And I'll never forget when I had my first meeting when I became a gym manager for the first time. And I sat down with the guy who managed the club. And he said, what do you want to talk about? I said, I want to talk about how we can get more people in here more of the time. And he goes, I don't want to talk about that. I said, why not? He goes, we've got 5,000 members. We don't want these people. We can't, in the evenings we're packed. And I was going, what? Excuse me? Are you serious? And he was serious. But I got a phone call from him maybe 7 or 8 years later, because where that gym was, within a few years, do you know how many more gyms opened up around there? And all of a sudden, people start having more choice. And why would someone go to a different gym? Or maybe it's cheaper, a better experience. And as you talk about that select group of people who, they don't need anything, they just want a good space to train and look in the mirror, that's great. But I think if we look outside of that and realize what do people really need, they need some work on their psychology. So let me give you an example. I have worked with many great athletes. I worked with Arsenal for 2 years when they did something that no other team has ever done before, which was very difficult for me because I don't support them. But I worked with people like Ronnie O'Sullivan, I worked with Sally Gunnell. I'm not telling that to drop names, it's just that you're trying to help someone get the result that they want. And this is very true in golf. If you ask a sports person, how much of the game do you think is mental? Most of them will say 90%. 90% of it is mental. And he said, well, okay, well then how much of the time do you actually train mentally? If it's 90% mental, they'll say, well, not very much. And it's the same with physical fitness. How much of it really is mental that gets you to the gym, keeps you going, makes you work that little bit harder? It's all to do with the brain. We know that our body is adaptable, it can grow, but so is the mind. This whole neuroplasticity of the brain is malleable. People can develop more willpower. Willpower outpredicts IQ. It's been proven. You could be the most intelligent person in the world, but so what if you don't have willpower? Willpower is the science of self-control. Have you heard of the marshmallow test?
Yeah, I have.
Okay,
but you explain it for people who probably haven't.
Okay, so let's imagine this, right? You and I are 5 years old, and we're in school, and the teacher says, listen, we're doing a little experiment. I'm going to put a marshmallow here for you, and I'm going to leave the room. And when I come back, if you haven't eaten that marshmallow, you can have 2. Now, I don't know what would you do if the teacher left? Would you have eaten it straight away? Would you have waited and eaten it, or would you have waited till he came back?
Yeah, well, I know the answer, but...
What would you have done?
Well, I would have... I'm pretty good self-control, to be honest. I'd like to think my children would also resist.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the most important traits of any human being. And for me, I would have waited, but the marshmallow, I wouldn't have waited. I mean, I would have waited for a bit.
There's a nice video, I think, on YouTube where you can actually see the children when they go away and they're sort of sniffing it. And
yeah, and that's what I would have been doing. And then I probably would have eaten it. But I would have waited a bit. I wouldn't have been the person who, I have got some self-control. But if there's chocolate in my house, it's got to go. But my wife has got so much more self-control than I have. She could have a Twix in the house for a year. But as long as I've got to know, I better not know where it is because I don't have as much willpower. But the people what this experiment was done, they were followed for like 50 years. And the ones who had more self-control, less likely to be in broken relationships, less likely to be in debt, just more likely to be fit and healthy. But can we train?
Is that genetic or is that something that
you can build willpower? But the crazy thing is, Matthew, about willpower is that the things we need willpower for give us willpower from doing them.
Okay.
Right, so you need willpower to exercise, right?
Okay.
Most people do. The willpower to get yourself to do it. Yeah. So you need willpower to do it, but then after you do it, how much willpower do you have from having done it? Right. Me, I make so much better choices because I exercised.
Absolutely.
So my wish for the industry is we need to wake up and realize, do we want to attract the aging population? Do we want to really attract anyone who's maybe would not see themselves as someone who's fit and healthy and well? And do we want to develop like an individualized approach to people where we take it as our responsibility to help you get results? I know there are facilities that like that, and I know there are personal trainers like that, but the industry as a whole should be, it's our responsibility to help you get the results.
And when you talk about industry then, are we talking then, for clarity, are we talking about traditional fitness clubs, like bricks and mortar clubs where people go and work out? Is that how?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I mean, they are, it's an industry which is still growing, right? I mean, there are more and more of these clubs. But I wonder why, is it all about money for these organizations, or is it all about getting the results and building a business based on the success of people? Or is it companies that just want to build so they can then sell? So are they really not that interested in people?
Well, I guess certainly my experience in the past, there was, there's a big, very lucrative, in the early days when we started our company, you could open a facility. Most towns across Europe didn't have one, and you had pretty much made your money before the doors are open in a lot of cases. I installed these gyms where there was queues around the door of people waiting to sign up. So I suppose as an investor, it's like, well, that's an interesting thing to put some money in because you're gonna make some money quickly. I guess as the industry's expanded, like your gym, now suddenly that's not quite the same game. You've got to have some advantage, either price or value, to be able to make money from it. And I think that's probably where the industry is at the moment, where it's not quite as easy to make money.
So there's a reason why the New Zealand rugby team is the most successful team in history with an 86% win ratio. They're always looking to reinvent themselves. And if you play for New Zealand, the whole idea is that when you leave the team in a better place than when you first came here. Right. So with the fitness industry, I think we constantly need to look at how can we create a new revolution. And I know we think about that in terms of equipment and what Escape have done. You have revolutionized the industry. I mean, however you want to look at it, you have, whether you were the first or where you got the idea from, to just say, hey, let's move this equipment out and let's create a space where people can move in a functional way. And when we move in a functional way, it definitely creates a different brain chemistry. That's if people do any type of activity where you're moving in multiple planes, something else seems to happen. So you've created that or been a part of that revolution. What's the next revolution? I don't know, what is the next revolution for you that you're looking for, apart from inspiring people through the podcast? What do you want?
I guess as you've touched upon it, I suppose if you look at the statistics that are there, still a very small percentage of the potential of people are actually working out. And I think, as you said, if you categorise them, you've got the people that will just work out in the car park with some bricks and a bit of a tree. You've got the people that are probably on the verge, and then you've got the ones that will never work out. And I guess, as you said, those ones in the middle make up a big percentage of it. But even myself, I've been working out for 30 years now, and it's not easy, as you say. It's not easy to get up or at the beginning or the end of a day and to work out. Even I live and breathe this industry, but even for me it's not easy, but I do it for a number of reasons. So how do you get someone that isn't like us, and probably a lot of the people that are listening to this that are probably not educated in the same way, how do you get them to sort of fix this? How do you get them to change their mindset from sitting on the couch to doing something that's going to change their life? And how, for yourself, how do you sort of keep that habit? What kind of things can you do to make it part of your life? Because I think we all struggle with it. I don't think I've met anyone that doesn't.
Because there are all days when we don't feel like it. Everyone has off days, and that actually is one of the biggest challenges anyone will face, is to do something when you don't feel like it. And I mean, part of my story. Let's just sidetrack, and then I will definitely come.
Okay.
You know the story of my wife, right? I mean, we met, I think, when my wife was still on the treatment. I mean, 8 years ago, my wife was given 18 months to live, right? She was diagnosed with a very aggressive brain tumor. She wasn't given very long. to live. Now, I was brought up quite well. My dad has always said, son, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So guess what? I do know a lot of people. And my mum has always said, there's an answer to everything. So professionally, I'm really good like that. I know a lot of people like you. If some people come to me for answers, if I can't get an answer, I'll find someone who has. So when this happened, I'm a big believer in coaching. I had a coach who's not here anymore. I called him up. I said, this is what happened. He said, find people in the world that have the same brain tumor and find out why. Why? What did they do? And then he also said, what is she going to do when she gets better? And I said, but she's been given 18 months. And I never forget what he said. He went, so what? He said, people defy the odds all the time. Now, the reason I tell this story is, obviously, it took us on a journey where I found a treatment in America. The treatment cost $200,000. We went there. The treatment started working quite quickly. We saw a nutritionist, Dr. Rakowski, one of the top nutritionists in the world. He put on a ketogenic diet, supplements, and she made an incredible recovery. 3 years after that, my wife's now 8 years cancer-free. 3 years later, I said to my wife, just in Finchley, where we were living at the time, I said, you remember what my coach said about what are you going to do when you get better? She said, yeah. And she started crying at that point. Now, the reason she started crying was she didn't have a future. If you've ever been diagnosed, I've never been diagnosed with anything like that, but I would imagine if you've been told or you think that death is something which could happen quite soon, you would not dream of a future. Now, the reason I say this is, obviously, it's a wonderful story and it's true. There's a few reasons. The first reason is this. Every single person has something inside them where, faced with adversity, we have the ability to bring this greatness out inside of us. And we know that we only really get to see the best in human beings in bad circumstances. Unless you're one of these freaks, not one of the freaks who necessarily exercises, the freaks of maybe 2% of people in the world that will tell you, this is me, this is where I'm going. This is where I'm going because I can see it. Because anything that exists has existed twice. First in the mind and then in reality. So, you create all of these spaces, not just because you think, let's create a space and just start doing it. No, you very clearly see the space that you want to create. So everyone has that ability. So if we want to help someone get slimmer, fitter, healthier, we need to help that person identify with the person that they want to become. That's called inspiration. It's the difference between motivation. Motivation, I know it's just a word, but most people are motivated away from things. Yeah. They want to move away from things.
Yeah, I certainly am. We had the conversation a little while ago. That's a driver.
Yeah, it's not a bad driver. It's a good driver. But it can drive you to, I don't know, to poor health. It could do. I'm like that.
It's not a nice way because you're trying to, name of our company, escape something. That's where the name of the business came from.
Really?
Yeah.
Yours? Oh, come on.
No, seriously. Yeah, absolutely.
No way.
Yeah.
So how?
It was to move. I'm going off, and I don't want this to be about me. But
no, hang on. How many people that are watching this want to know the name of the podcast, the name of your company? I want to know. You wanted to escape from what?
Yeah, so we were sitting out. We used to run these parties in the evening. I used to promote nightclub parties, and I was set out the back. It weren't particularly successful. It was on a bank holiday, August, Thursday, I remember, and we'd put a load of money in it, hoping it was going to be a success, and it wasn't. And me and my friend set out in the car out the back of this nightclub while everything was going on inside, and we just thought we need to do something, and we came up with this idea. It wasn't this one, it was one of the other ideas that failed. And we said, we need a name for the company. And he said, Escape. And I was like, why Escape? And he's like, well, we want to escape where we are, and we escape this mess. And that was the driver. We wanted to get out of where we were. We wanted to get out where we were living, this situation, this financial situation. So that was how it started. It was originally a ladies' clothes company, and that's why it's got nothing to do with fitness whatsoever.
So why did you take the name and then apply it to Escape Fitness?
Because we'd set up a company, we got some business cards, we didn't have any money, so it was a limited company, and so we got involved in fitness, and it was like, well, let's just keep it and stick fitness on the end. No relation
It's such an amazing story, and you just think the amount of people that are involved in Escape in some way with the equipment or with the podcast, now knowing that story. And I think, before I came here, you asked me yesterday about, what do we want to talk about? And, part of what I wanted to talk about was helping people take the lead in what they're doing and escape the story that they've been telling themselves. What we say to ourselves, that's the really thing that we should all be really interested in, the conversations that we have with ourselves, because most people talk themselves out of exercise. They convince themselves they can't do it. And, the quality of our life, Matthew, really just comes down to the quality of the conversation that we're having with ourselves. We often don't talk about it, especially if we're men. You know, in 2012, 800,000 people took their own lives. 80% of those people were men. So, you know, you can imagine what are the stories they must be telling themselves that would lead them down that road. Yeah. And the point I really wanted to make, and I would love, you know, because it's my message, if you like, is life is a story, right? This is our story. Our stories we've connected a few times over the years. We have connected, you know, we're friends, but then we'll go off, and then we'll go off continuing our story. But we love a story. Yeah. That's what we love. Human beings love story. I was on the plane coming back from South Africa. I watched Creed 2. I've seen Creed 1. I've seen Rocky Balboa. I've seen Rocky 5, Rocky 4, Rocky 3, Rocky 2, Rocky 1. Every single one of those stories is exactly the same. Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Wizard of Oz. Every single one of those stories is the same. And the story is this. Someone is called to an adventure, and often they don't want to go. So Frodo did not want to leave the Shire. And when he eventually did, it was because Gandalf took his hand and said, look, you know, come on. His friends all got around. Have you seen Lord of the Rings?
No, I haven't.
Don't worry, you're kind of not missing that much, unless, of course, you like Lord of the Rings. They come to this edge of a field, and they all go, we've never been past this point.
Oh, yeah.
So imagine if they think, yeah, we haven't, let's go home. So no, it's the fact that they crossed over, they went somewhere they hadn't been before, and of course the story unfolds. Right. We watch these films because we identify with the characters. That's the only reason. We watch the film and then we often go back to our normality and our story. In the industry that we are in, the health and fitness industry, we should be really curious, what's the story that you're telling yourself about fitness? What is your story? What is the story that you want to create, and how could we help you create that story? And that's why personal trainers, they should become more coaches. None of this is complicated. It is not complicated. It's a little bit more of an investment into that person to get to that person where they eventually start making it's a habit. They like it. And we make people, it's not complicated, but it's giving people a different frame. It's giving them a different philosophy. So going back to your question, which seemed to be ages ago.
Which I've forgotten about.
Well, the question was, you know, what do we do to get people to the point? Well, we've got to get them to feel that we care. Right. You know, and that's a funny word, because to me, care really means love. That you show love to the person. You make the people. I'm really here to help you. What do you want? What do you need from me? Imagine if we said that. Someone joined the gym. Okay, what do you want? What exactly do you need from me? How can I assist you in this process of getting the results that you want? And it won't take much, but it will take a new philosophy, a new type of culture that we want to create, where we want to help you get results so that people believe in what they're doing, they feel confident, they change that dialogue inside their head, and eventually exercise becomes something that they do. I mean, how many people are there out there that have already done that? Many people, right, who hated it. Yeah. Why can't we do that with more? Imagine if we did that with a few hundred more each year. We would change the industry, we'd change the world, we'd create a revolution.
So do you think for trainers, which in a lot of cases, not all, but in the majority, you know, it's a relatively low paid job, and we're very much working on the bodies. I think you identified that earlier. Do you think then, as trainers and leaders, which I know you talk about in your new book, do you think really it's about gaining the skills where we can sort of work top down and work with the mind? You know, is that what you're saying? It starts with the mind, and if you're going to be effective at leading people, you need to understand how to, you know, work and you know, work with their mind.
So the whole leader thing, I don't know about you, but my experience of leadership was, I just thought leaders were some people that you had to follow. Yeah. You know, I never thought about leaders being someone you want to follow. And there are some amazing leaders out there, people that have led us, who have inspired us in this industry. You know, I've been inspired by, Paul Chek, Charles Poliquin, obviously, who's no longer with us, people like Dr. Rakowski, Colin Deans, people who I wanted to follow. And I think that that's what the industry needs in clubs, that we need people that we identify with that person. But I think the goal has to be helping people see that they can take the lead with this. Because one of the biggest challenges in the world right now is people are not taking responsibility and are blaming everyone and everything for everything, knowing deep down. I think deep down everyone wants to be fitter and healthier and wants more energy, But the easiest thing that we can all do is just blame rather than helping people take the lead. I mean, my goal in life is to help people take the lead with their health, their relationships, and their work. Because there was a guy that won the Nobel Prize in 1937, and his theory was basically something called syntropy, which is every living cell lives for one reason, to express itself fully. And I believe we all want to express ourselves fully, but there's some effort attached to that. There's some work attached to that. And hard work is almost frowned upon these days. Mastery is frowned upon, the idea that someone might be working at something to get better. And the other thing I wanted to say about this, which I think is so important, is in 1972, the guy who won the Nobel Prize, he basically said the biggest issue in the world today is too much information.
Yeah.
That was in 1972, right? And you think about now, how much information is there? How easy is it to get distracted? Yeah. And this is something else that I think coaches have got to get really good at, is helping people develop that growth mindset, mental, physical, helping people get their information from not too many sources, because you can get confused.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many people.
How do you deal with that? Because I've spoke about this on the podcast with, everything from nutrition and exercise, everything that someone says, you can go online and you can have a contradictory view on everything. Yeah. How do you, I guess you've got consumers, let's call them consumers, people who are coming and spending money in a gym or whatever, and then you've got the sort of professionals. The professionals, I guess, should be more informed, but even for those, it's like, well, what do I listen to? What's right? How do we know what to focus on and where to go? What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's such a good question, and it's such a big challenge, because the most valuable thing that we own is, people say our health, and I would agree, but I'd also say our attention. And if your attention is being pulled, where do you put your attention? I don't really know the answer to that. I just know that when we are pulled, our attention is pulled, we find it very hard to focus.
What do you do personally then in that situation?
I have to meditate. I have to, and in fact, I'm glad you asked me about that, because solitude is very important. The human brain, we need that. We need to switch off. But there's some amazing research, which was done years ago, but now it's getting more and more attention. And I don't know how much you've heard about this, but it's heart rate variability. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I read about this years ago. There was a book called Heart Math, which is about what is the heart doing in between beats. This whole thing about coherence and incoherence. I mean, it's obvious, but more and more of the technology we're going to see now, it will be measuring what actually is your heart doing. It's almost like, how is your heart feeling? And we know, it's obvious, right? Stress, anxiety, worry, fear creates incoherence. Whereas love, gratitude, kindness creates coherence. And you can see this. If you could get people to think about it, and there's technology now where you can see what the heart is doing. I mean, I've used this technology, and it's amazing, because I often see in the morning how I have to really work at creating that coherent state. My natural state would be, I'm frantic, right? I was born 7 weeks premature. I was in a hurry to come out. I've been in a hurry ever since. So my nature is one of, let's go! And in my 20s, I'm massively burnt out, chronic fatigue, diagnosed with ME. I was looking for answers to make me better, but the only answers really were, okay, let's look at the internal environment. What is going on? How am I feeling? And when you can start helping people look at what's going on inside them, because a lot of people exercise because they think it's going to make a change to how they feel about themselves. And of course it can, but we also know in many cases it exacerbates the challenge that people have about who they are. I think, if we look at really how do people feel about themselves, most people feel not good enough and they can't be loved, and with all the information. And there's the iPhone effect, right, which we've all heard about, which is, it's not just the fact that we're always looking at our iPhone. Most people are holding their breath when they're using their phone. Yeah, just watch them. When I heard about this, I thought, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm holding my breath while I'm waiting for the emails to come through. And I'm creating incoherence in the body. And what do we want in this industry? Do we just want people to look good, or do we want people to feel good? And do we not just want them to feel good? We want them to live a long life. And we want them to be members for a long time of our gyms. Because genetically, most of us could live to about 120. Really? We have that ability, yes, because our body can regenerate itself 6 times and the whole body regenerates every 20 years. You have a whole new system every 20 years. And then there's something else called epigenetics, which, we talk about our DNA, which is fascinating. There's all this DNA testing going on, which is interesting. But there's a level above our DNA, which is called epigenetics, which is about how our genes are expressing themselves based on how we're living, based on how we're feeling, So I think more and more people are becoming more receptive to better health, but I think a lot of people want it all done for them, and unfortunately...
You're a magic pill, I guess.
Yeah. You remember those machines, those toning tables? You lie there and your legs will go up and down. There's more of these app machines now. I saw one on Instagram. And isn't it funny when you look at something on Instagram, if you actually then look at it, they know what you're looking at and they'll send you more of the same to feed your insecurity. So in answer to your question, how do we deal with this? I think we have to decide what's really important. We have to decide who we want to associate with, who we want to get our information from, and just take responsibility. Maybe do it all with a big smile on our face, because this is what my coach said to me years ago. He said, what's the nature of the mind? And I gave him an answer based on my psychology education. And he just looked at me and went, no. The nature of your mind is your mind plays tricks on you. And I thought about it. And he went, yeah, have you ever been trying to go to sleep and your mind's, playing a trick, and did I leave the front door open? You're walking down the street, you think someone's behind you. I think our minds always play tricks on us. How do we conquer our mind? Well, that's what he said. You've got to find a bit of humor in what you think. If you can find humor in what you think, then you're in control. If you can't find humor in what you're thinking, you're a victim to what you're thinking. Okay. And I don't know about you, I really do think that us seeing the lighter side of ourselves will make a huge difference. And it is an industry where I think we could all, you're going back to, if the industry was a person, I'd say, mate, seriously, smile. Seriously, you're taking yourself way too seriously. But maybe that's just me,
You're big on coaching, and I guess because you're a coach. Do you think that's important, or do you think we can do things on our own? And I guess at some point you've got to have some. You've got to do something yourself, haven't you? I suppose.
Well, the role of a coach. I mean, the word coach comes from a coach on horses, right? So you go on a coach on horses because you want to go somewhere, right? Okay. So first off, most people don't know where they're going anyway. So as a coach, it's trying to find out what is it that you really want. The whole why thing, which most people are aware of. The whole Simon Sinek, one of the most famous TED talks, about. It starts with why. People don't buy what you do. People don't buy how you do it. They buy why. They want to know why. And we want to know why people want the results that they want. But I suppose, what's really fascinating is about we've already touched on this, what is driving people. I think the role of a coach is to get someone to coach themselves. Okay. What do we want as personal trainers? Do we want our clients to always just follow us all the time and we want to coach them forever? Or we do want to get someone to a place where they're okay. They don't really need us. Maybe they come back occasionally, but we're helping people take responsibility to the point where they're able to coach themselves. But I think what a coach can do is get you to go above and beyond what you would normally do, because there's something inside all of us, I think, where we're scared and frightened to go to the edge of what is comfortable. But we know it's called, what's that word called, when you're homeostasis, where we have a level of where we're comfortable, but our level can grow, but it just grows in small increments, and that's where coaching can really be. See, coaching is different from teaching. Teaching, you're telling someone what to do. Coaching is when you're asking questions, where you get people to think about things, because we know people don't change really when we tell them what to do. People change when their perspective changes, when they go, oh, I've never thought of it like that. So when I tell the story of my wife, of what happened to her, I'd love people who are listening to this to maybe think, oh, we've all got that inside all of us. Why do we have to wait for a disaster to happen before we decide to go out and do something heroic? Why can't we be heroic about something that we want to do and want to achieve? That is why the world is here today, because some people have decided, let's do this. Let's create this, let's make this happen. And I think we need more people like that, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I definitely. And as you talk about that, I can relate that to myself. We interviewed Dorian Yates, and one of the things he talked about in terms of his training and when he trains other people is showing them how much further they've got the ability to go than what they actually think. And I guess that's true in anything in life. You know, you naturally stop at a certain place because you think you've done it, but really you could do 2 more of anything.
Yeah.
And I suppose, you know, I like to think about myself, can I be my own coach? Can I push myself to that? And sometimes in a workout I can. But it also helps if someone kind of believes in you to say, I know you can do that. I can already see you can do that. And that almost sometimes gives you that confidence that you may
Absolutely.
need.
And we need people to bring out the best in us. I don't know whether you've seen the film. Most people have seen it, Castaway, right? So Tom Hanks on a beach, washed up, and on a FedEx. It was a terrible advert for FedEx. But the plane crashes and loads of stuff gets washed up, and he thinks he's going to get rescued, and all the things are there, all the FedEx parcels, and then he realizes he's not going to get rescued. So he starts opening things, and then one of them is a volleyball, and it's made by Wilson. And he falls on the ball by accident, and he's cut his hand, and there's like a hand, it looks like a face. So he starts talking to this ball, and it's called Wilson. So Wilson becomes his best friend, and that's how he makes sense of this whole experience. And that's how most of us make sense of the world, by talking to ourselves. But it's much easier when you talk to someone, you know, because let's face it, the world doesn't make sense. The world is mad. In this country, which is, we're now in Great Britain, but I don't know why people call it great, because it's not as great as it was, because there's something missing, lack of leaders, maybe when this goes out, maybe we'll know what's happening with Brexit. Or in America, where you've got, you know, a leader. I'm not saying he's a good or bad leader, but it's like, how did that actually happen? You know, who are we in charging to take the lead in our lives? It's something we have to do. Most people do not see themselves as a leader, but this morning, Matthew, you led yourself out of bed. I don't know if you did it well. I don't know whether you pressed snooze. I don't know whether you had what happened? Do you remember what happened this morning?
I did press snooze actually, but I wanted to get my workout in before I drove down here, so I kind of knew my maximum where I had
maximum time before you could do it. You know, people say you snooze, you lose, but really, actually, they do in many cases, because we sleep in 90-minute cycles. So if you wake up and then you snooze and you go back into a cycle and you bring yourself out of it, you're probably lucky you don't do that very often, or you exercise, which really wakes you up. But if you snooze a few times, they're like vampires, those people, because they come alive. They're terrible in the day, and they just come alive. We are leading ourselves with all of the decisions that we make. And again, giving people this frame of way of looking at things. Our life is governed by the conversations that we have with ourselves, right? So we all talk to ourselves. Right now, I'm talking to you, and right then, you just started talking to yourself because you thought of something to write down, which means you're not listening to me. But that's absolutely fine, because I can do the same thing. I could be talking to you and talking to myself, which means I'm not really giving you the best of myself. And this is why communication doesn't always really work, because people aren't really listening. But the point I wanted to make is, look, we've all got a voice in our head. Some people call it par X. Some people call it a chimp, the chimp paradox, which is written by Dr. Stephen Peters, or the book I wrote with someone else you know, Bobby Cappuccio, called Shut the Duck Up, you know, the voice in our head. But, and this is really, really, really fascinating, do you think of yourself as a genius?
No.
No, most people wouldn't. Now, if you go and look at the dictionary definition of the word genius, you'd look at it and you think, no, I'm not a genius, because it will tell you what it means is someone who's intellectually clever, knows a lot of stuff. But then, when you look at the etymology of the word, which I didn't know what etymology meant until, where does the word come from?
Okay.
Right? And this is what I would encourage everyone to do. Go and look at the root meaning of the word genius. It actually comes from the Romans. And the Romans believed, but they didn't come up with this idea, they got it from the Greeks. The Romans believed that everyone was born with a genius inside them, a guiding voice that would guide them in the direction that they needed to go. I personally believe that, and if you were around at the time of the Romans, you wouldn't want to argue with them because you could get crucified. But what if that was true? What if it was true that the reason you're sitting here today and I'm sitting here today is because of my genius, that I've given my genius more attention, that I know that there's a voice in my head that goes, da, 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 but I know there's a part of me that goes, no. They didn't come up with the idea, they got the idea from the Greeks. The Greeks called it a daimon. And I believe that. I fundamentally believe inside every single person that genius is there.
It's a nice belief to have. It's it's a good one, even if it's not true.
Even if it's not true, but even if it's not true, you could, just like placebos, what if you did start to believe it was true? I mean, let's face it, we have that conversation every single day. The conversation this morning about you getting out of bed was based on one part of you going, let's snooze, and the other part going, no, but we need to exercise. Which one won? For the ones of us that have the success in life, we're the ones who have that better conversation. Yeah. And there's one other thing that I would love to share about this, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about stories and why we love stories. We identify with the characters. We identify with the hero. So even with your children, if you read them a story, the story, it's never just a wonderful story. There's always something that goes wrong and a hero rises to the top. But the word hero actually comes from a Greek word called heros, which means protector. So a real hero is someone who wants to protect. And in the industry, we should be looking to think less of ourselves and more of the people that we're trying to protect. But check this out. Hero in the beginning. This is something that most of us know about, because how many times in our life have we started something and at the beginning we've been heroic for the first day, week, month.
It's pretty easy, I guess, to have it at the beginning.
Yeah, so this is so unbelievably incredible. That concept has been around since people first started writing. So in Indian Sanskrit, there is a word for hero in the beginning. So people recognize that people would start off something heroically. I'm thinking, what? Like what? Thousands of years ago, what were people doing? Maybe starting farming and thought, oh, I can't be bothered with that. What did people start that they would stop? So it's okay. We need to recognize we've all done it. And what happens is we start something.
So there's a word for that particular...
Rumba Gushunga or something like that. So you can Google it.
So like for, starting something for a short period of time and then stopping.
Like joining a gym.
Right, okay.
And start off with huge amounts of intensity. And we should not be focusing on intensity. We should be focusing on consistency. Because once consistency comes in, then people tend to fall into the habit. But my point here is, let's understand whether you are in the industry, how many people are coming in and they've started things with all good intentions. Where do those intentions go? They go outside the back door and they go away, and people go back to the story that they were telling themselves or to being distracted. We need to be heroic in how we build this industry, and we should all become heroes. It sounds crazy, but if we saw everyone that we came into contact with for us to work with, if we saw, okay, this person's running their own story, we want to help them create this adventure that they're about to go on. How do we facilitate that? How do we find out what they've done in the past? How do we find out the obstacles? There's a brilliant piece of scientific work around it, something called WHOOP. There's a woman called Gabrielle Oettingen who all about this concept of what do you call it, where you can see a self-fulfilling prophecy, vision boarding, which in most cases vision boards don't make any difference for people because, you can put the vision board and then just think, oh, that looks good. You're not driven to act.
So how do you get that? And I'm trying to sort of remember where we were, but this is something I've talked about quite a bit. So in terms of getting that vision, because my guess is that, and I know I'm relating to myself, but you kind of have you're this hero, you've got this good intention, and your vision is very clear in front of you. You're very excited about it. It's in your mind. You're reading stuff. You're going to the gym. It's all excitement. But then over time, you're sort of picturing the brain tends to sort of go, and you don't quite. It's not a 360-degree experience, and it's the same in business, in all kinds of areas, and that's probably why people they're all over the place and distracted. How do you keep that excitement and that vision about where you want to go, so you don't start looking to the left or to the right? How do you do that if the vision boarding is...
Well, okay, so there's two things. The vision boarding just misses on one piece, which is the activation energy that makes you act. And in one of the best ways to get ourselves to act is to this thing called WHOOP, W-O-O-P. So W stands for what's the wish? What do you wish for? The O is what's the outcome, the feeling that's attached. But the next O is the obstacles. What are the obstacles that are going to stand in your way? Because you're going to come across obstacles. What was the obstacles that happened in the past? And then P, what's the plan to overcome the obstacles? This is such a great strategy to use with people. I mean, you can't predict for some obstacles that you don't know are going to happen, but the history has a habit of repeating itself. And then so how do you keep it alive every single day? Well, unfortunately, Matthew, it's quite boring. You have to remind yourself every single day. There was a reason why Michael Phelps was the greatest swimmer of all time, because he reminded himself every single day, just because you had a good day yesterday, so what? Every day we should wake up and think, it sounds crazy, but we should remind ourselves, what is it that is important to me? What is it I need to remind myself of? I have to remind myself every day of my values, my virtues, which are things like kindness, fairness, respect, and I write them down because I just want them in the forefront of my mind. Connection. So I'm thinking about today, so I want to connect with you.
Do you do that when you meditate? Is that part of your meditation?
Before, I just write it.
Right.
You know, I go to work on myself because, you know, if I don't, what's going to happen? I'm just going to be too influenced by everything else that's going on around me in a world that's gone crazy. And sometimes I do forget, but I need to remind myself.
And is that a key, sorry, just there, because I think that's an important thing. Do you think that's a key thing for just, you know, anybody of any level, regardless of how big the goal is, for that reminder? Because again, I'll go back to Dorian Yates, but he used to say, like, every single day he would do his workout twice, like pretty much like you said. Once in his head, he would go through the whole thing, feel the pain, and he says that was his process. And I guess it's, you know, this is something I suppose all of us struggle with. Is just not, you know, not distraction and moving forward. So are you saying then that the way to success, whether it's diet, business, whatever, is just every day you're going to have to kind of, you know, exercise your mind and you know, get.
I'd say for 99% of people, you need to do that, and you need to be consistent with doing a few things every single day. And
why 99%?
Maybe because, you know, there's no one rule that applies to everybody, but human beings just have this habit of being a hero in the beginning and not being consistent. And the word consistent has a few meanings, but basically it means something that is what is holding something together? You know, what's holding you together, what's holding me together is we have virtues, we have goals. We are, as the Greek called, teleological. We need to be goals-centered. If we're not, we just tend to drift and, you know, there is a gap between where we are and where we want to be, and I think our life is all about filling in that gap and growing and evolving, because that's what I feel that we're here to do. And I think some people need a bit more help, than others, because being a human being isn't always easy, right? It's not always the way you would want it to be. It can be really difficult and challenging, but it's a lot easier when you're looking after yourself to meet the challenge. We go into training. I think we should be going into training to then deal with the challenges that are coming. Because if a challenge comes today, we're going to be in a better place to deal with it because of the work that we've put into ourselves.
Yeah. And you use, I'm using an extreme example, if you don't mind, but you talk about your partner and, you know, her sort of potential future or problems or whatever were you know, were life ending, and she was able to look or you know, guided to look beyond that. I guess some people is about just losing weight and, you know, struggling with the Mars bar in the fridge. Were those similar principles to what she did? You know, was she sort of thinking about that future beyond what was happening as she was going through this at all?
But you know, actually, the science has shown that actually, if you take two groups of people who exercise and you look at the ones who are focused on, let's say, losing weight in the future, and the ones who are just focused on the feeling that they get from having done it, the ones who focus on the feeling that they're going to get from having done it completely outperform the ones who focus on the result, because the result is just too far into the future. We should let the result happen as a consequence of, okay, I want that, but let's focus on the feeling that I'm going to get. That doesn't necessarily answer your question, but going back to the situation with my wife, I knew that it would be great for my wife to start creating a future of where she wanted to go. But I don't know if your wife, who is pretty awesome, does she listen to you? Sometimes. Yeah. But if you give her advice try to advise her, I don't know, but most of our partners, when we try to advise them, especially if it's something that we do, they try to think, why are you, I'm not listening to you. My wife wouldn't listen to me about a few things, so I thought I need some help here. So I Googled visualizing your future, and I came across a woman called Patty Dobovolsky, who's given 3 TED Talks, who specializes in helping people draw where they are and where they want to go. It's amazing who you can find and who you become friends with. We now coach each other, this lady. We've become best friends and we work together all over the world. But my wife watched this TED Talk and actually drew the future that she was looking for. And I'd say that there's one piece in that which hasn't happened yet, which is a child. Everything else that she drew, which was the house it's almost identical, the house that she drew, even though it's like a child's drawing, because most people think they can't draw, but we think in pictures, Matthew. Everyone does. If I say, what do your children look like? You know, what are you doing after this? I know what you're doing afterwards because I've already asked. I can picture the person who you're... So we think in pictures. If you think in pictures and you create the picture and you draw it, it becomes real to you. And if you look at it every day, and as I told you, as I was telling the guys here, that we saw the neuro-oncologist the other day, and he sat down with Hannah and I, and he said, listen, Hannah, your results are incredible. They are. We can't see anything. It's a miracle. So miracles, you know, do happen. And going back to the industry, we should just be obsessed, absolutely obsessed with what is the results that you're looking for? How can we help you? What do you need in order to get the results? Because there's nothing better than helping someone who didn't... I mean, that's one of the greatest things, where you see someone who just walks tall because they love exercise and they love who they've become, and they did it. We didn't do it for them. We assisted them. But yeah.
So just to bring it down, because there's a bunch of different things we've got down. All very interesting. So a couple of things. I'm going to go in reverse order. So one of the takeaways, which I like, it's something that interests me, so I'm going to be a bit selfish here, but in terms of achieving goals, whether that's, you know, coming into the gym, getting the body you want, getting the relationship, business, whatever. One of the things then that I seem to be getting from what you're saying, and I think you're saying there's a lot of research about this, regardless of who does it, but if you want to achieve some sort of goal is to get clarity on what that is, which everybody, I guess, has heard of. There's nothing new there. But also, in order to make that work, is every day you've got to kind of connect with that.
Every day. And if you have a day off, good luck, because that's okay in most cases. Become 2 days, it's almost like starting again. The brain favors familiarity. It's people who try and do things a couple of times a week versus people that do things every single day completely outperform people who just kind of dabble around at things.
Right, so there's doing that.
Yeah.
The bit that I didn't quite understand is you mentioned another piece of research where you said that although if people think too far in the future and they don't focus on the feeling at the moment, they're not going to perform. How do those two connect?
That's a great question. So worked with Ronnie O'Sullivan for 2 years. He won the World Championship for the second time. And that was one of the big things we talked about. How much do you want to win? You know, and of course he was obsessed with winning. One of the most obsessed people I've ever met with winning. Hates losing. Just like the person, his nemesis at that time, Stephen Hendrick, absolutely hated losing. Well, if you want to win, you've got to pay the ultimate price of winning, which is to see the win and then focus on what's going on right here, right now, because that's the only thing that you actually can control. And the more we can get people into the process of enjoying what's going on, the more, you know, it's obvious, right? It tends to grow. So it's thinking about where you want to go, but then becoming obsessed with what it is that needs to be done in the moment.
Right.
So,
and would you say some of that is to do with appreciating? Because I know, being related to myself, being in business, you're always thinking about what's next. So, you know, thinking 20 years ago to where I am today would just be fantastic. But now I'm like somewhere else, and so you're never really in the moment. And this is something I'm working on, but appreciating actually what's going on. You know, the detail of today.
See, that's because you're not perfect, right? You know, you're not perfect, and you know, and recognizing that is great, because you know, human beings aren't. Well, physically, we're not perfect. We don't live forever. You might have noticed I've got quite a big nose. You know, physically, I'm not perfect. Psychologically, I've got hang-ups. It's part of being a human being. But recognizing that first is I think the most important thing. The second thing, and what came to my mind as a coach when you said that, is start sharing your vision of where this is going with more people, so more people get involved in that vision, and we'll bring it forward, so you can maybe step back and let people move forwards as you sit on the sidelines and start to enjoy what it is that you have created, because you know that's what you want, right?
Yeah.
You know, because you've worked so hard to create something, you want to keep going, because I don't know, getting off the treadmill, it's like, what would happen?
Yeah. Do you think, in terms of we're coming onto the fitness, though, but even I suppose appreciating where you are in the journey, you know, sort of how far, just sort of looking at it almost, I guess, as a bit of a story, as a movie, and being aware that it is a movie, and you're here, and it's like, well, this is a cool place to be at this moment. Almost separating yourself from...
Stepping back from what's going on, And there was that program called The Generation Game I watched when I was kids, where people who would win would end up sitting in front of a conveyor belt, and all these things would go past, and everything that they could remember they could have. But they'd always remember the crap things, like the cuddly toy, a decanter of crystal glasses. They'd forget the fact there was a holiday on there, because it was so like trying to remember everything. And the ones who would remember would just sit back and just watch and then see what they saw. I think sometimes...
That's a very good magic. Wait for
step back.
The good stuff.
And step off and observe what's going on and see, that's interesting, be curious. See yourself as, the writer, the actor, the producer of everything that's going on. And if you could see it as a game, then, it's a game like, well, how's the game going? Are you happy with the way it's performing? Is there any way you want to shape the game? It's your game. Most of us are playing the game by someone else's rules that we've been told on how we think and how we should move through the world. But, I think the more we can take responsibility for our lives, the more fruitful our lives will become, right?
Yeah. So as we sort of wrap up then, so let's go back to the beginning in terms of the industry. So we've talked about kind of what's probably wrong. What do you think then we should be, if there was some takeaways for people, what do you think we should be doing? What are some of the things that we could listen to this and say, well, look, this is going to be good, both for business, because, at the end of the day, we need things to be profitable and successful to expand. So, what should we be doing that works both from a business perspective, but also in terms of, making a difference and moving the industry forward?
Should dream big, first off, dream big about what we want to do, and we need a revolution. And people should be saying, revolution, man, it's time for a revolution. Not a resolution, New Year's resolution, which is just going round in circles. A revolution is where we almost throw out some of what we've been doing that we know that isn't working, and start a revolution around literally making a big difference and making those people who could go one of either way, making them go that way, and set some targets around that. If anyone wants to talk to me about it, I'd be more than happy to help people, anyone in this industry, because I still believe in it. I just don't think we've actually come that far in the last 30 years. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we need more people like us to say, let's start a revolution of really helping more people get into fitness, so it just becomes something that they do, not something that they feel they have to do. It's a part of their life. So revolution for me is the word, and obviously...
So tell us a bit about what you're doing at the moment, your book, where people can find you.
Well, this is the 19th book I've written. The first book I wrote was called Slimming with Pete. Some people thought it was called Swimming with Pete, but there was no swimming involved. And, this book is about learning how to be an inspirator, taking the lead in your life. And I just believe everyone wants to take the lead, but they need some help. My mission in life is quite simple, is inspiring people to be better than their best every single day, and take the lead in their health, their work, their relationships, and inspiring people to see their life as one big hero's journey. In that book, we talk about the hero's journey, that is in every film, and how to help people see their life in that way. And also films, whether it's The Matrix, it's like, well, which pill do you want? You remember that film? Everyone seems to have seen it. Which pill? Do you want? I don't know which color the pills were, but it's like, do you want to take that pill of staying everything is, or do you want to take that pill of where everything changes and you face the real truth of what's really going on? That if we can help people see their life as a movie, we just have a different perspective, and we feel different about where we are, where we're going. So I'm still on a mission like I've ever been. I'm 40.
Where can you get this, by the way?
At the moment, it'll be out in the shops in July, but it's available from our website, inspirators.me. Okay. And if people buy the book, there's a whole load of additional content. I spent 3 years working on that book, interviewing people about leadership, and they can get access to all of those interviews and become a leader in their own right.
And what was the website again?
Inspirators.me, so that's INSPIRATORS.me. I'm dyslexic.
And is it on Amazon? Or
it will be as of July.
Okay. And is this just UK or?
Worldwide.
Worldwide. Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And any other places to connect with you like LinkedIn or any of that?
Yeah, definitely LinkedIn, Instagram, but I really use Instagram as a photo album because I seem to forget. I just love to, that's why I want to get a picture of what we've done today so I can remember today. My podcast, Mi365. And yeah, or just, I'm sure people can find me. Okay. So if they want to.
Okay. And then final question then. So Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you've told yourself is impossible or other people have told you that's impossible? Outside of what we've spoken about today, what would be one of your sort of recent examples of escaping your own personal limits?
Well, it's every single day. It's recognizing that you can be inspired to do something, and if you don't act within like literally 5 seconds, that's where self-doubt and hesitation sets in. So
what do you mean by that?
So I could think, oh, I could just go and drink a glass of water, but before I do that, I'll have a look at another cat video on YouTube. You know, that when you're inspired to do something, you've got to act. Act, because if you don't, that's where hesitation and self-doubt sets in. So become someone thank you for asking me that, because inspiration is not really coming to you. Inspiration is coming because you have gone towards something. The hardest thing to do is get to the gym. Once you get there, it's easy. The hardest thing to do is to get in the kitchen and peel that onion. Once you've peeled it, the cooking process is much easier to do. We need to get started every single day with a few things. And the hardest thing to do is just get started. So.
And do you think some of that, because I've started to notice this, something I've done recently, you know, with again, maybe in business, but coming up with those ideas and doing something about it. And sometimes even afterwards, you question yourself, oh, you know, should I have done that? You know it's possible, but sometimes it's a bit scary to do those things as well, isn't it?
Well, it's the duck in our head that often wants us to keep where we are. I was talking to a doctor about the duck. He was an Indian Ayurvedic doctor, and he said, oh, the duck talks to you to trying to get you to not do something so that you can show the duck, no, I can do it, to show yourself, look what I can do. So no great thing has ever really been done without difficulty. I mean, finding out about escape and where the name came from, it didn't come out of something great. It came out of something that was actually quite difficult that allowed you to escape to then create something which is now amazing. So we all have this ability to transcend, we all have this ability to grow, we all have this ability to leave a mark on this earth. And I actually believe everyone wants to leave a mark on this earth, a positive mark. But it's time for a revolution. I think that for me is the key word I'm going to take away from this podcast.
Yeah, well, there's been some brilliant takeaways. I've really enjoyed it. If nothing else, it's certainly made a difference to me.
Good.
I hope it has to everyone else. So I appreciate your time, Pete, and
it's a pleasure.
Good luck with the book, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.